Happy Thursday and welcome to today's very special episode of Veeam Tech Bites, backing it all up. And I have a very special guest. Actually, this may be, Tom, I'm thinking about it through. You may be my first alliance partner of Veeam contact ever. So this is my 15th year at Veeam, and you've been through it as long. My guest is Tom Gillispie from ExaGrid. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rick. Thanks so much for this opportunity. Yeah, Veeam and ExaGrid, better together, man.
You know, it's funny because Tom, this will win you a drink at a bar. And this is true. This is, the resident historians, you and me, can only pull this type of stuff off. Here's the little thing. The question is, what storage has Veeam had an integration with, or the other way around, a storage had an integration with Veeam the longest in market?
Gotta be ExaGrid, man.
It is, absolutely. You were doing it before we were doing it. So, and now it's improved so much over those years. So there you go. A little piece of history there can win you a bet at a bar. But Tom, your role at ExaGrid, y'all are based up in Massachusetts. We've got some of the team. We've got the producers. We've got Lady Megatron, Felicia, and Jeffrey tuning in from the Barncade in Ohio, Illinois, and some of the ExaGrid team from Massachusetts and Chicago. Let us know on the stream where you're tuning in from. We've got a quick look at the map here, and we'll go back to it. But we're live on several streams, so let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from, and Jeff will light up the map-plication, as I like to call it. But Tom, before we jump into it, take a quick moment, introduce yourself, your role, and what the broader ExaGrid team do.
Sure. Thanks, Rick. Again, pleasure to be here. My role at ExaGrid is twofold. First, within the engineering organization associated with interoperability of the ExaGrid solution with all the various backup applications and partners, and also a role within product management here at ExaGrid. Been here a number of years, enjoyed the growth, the story, how we're making a difference in people solving this backup problem.
Man, your backup problem. I don't know if it's a problem. I think it's exciting. I come into this every day, super exciting. And a couple of points here. I want to give you my perspective on ExaGrid. And my favorite here is just that you're laser focused on backup, which is actually really similar to Veeam, because that's really what we focus on as well. Being 100% focused on backup storage and the largest independent vendor in the space. So good stuff. NPS, that looks good. Great customer, worldwide presence. Congratulations on this, because storage is a really competitive market. But anything you want to add to some of these points?
No, I would highlight the over 4,700 customers at this point, absolutely worldwide, sales and support to back that all in theater. And the double-digit growth, the cash positive. It's an exciting story. And I have just a few slides in terms of the architectural differences as well, Rick.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. But, those who haven't heard, ExaGrid, household name in the space. And some of the, we're going to get to this one, right? In particular, the tiered backup storage approach. I really like that. So, yeah, walk us through kind of the users and some of the, the business conditions and more that make purpose-built backup storage, really resonate with organizations.
Sure. So when we talk to people, they resonate around these 4 different big areas. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but there is the sense that productivity is important. Of course, continuity around your business operations. Veeam has done just an unbelievable job in terms of providing real solutions for that across the years. And then, of course, cost is important. A lot of things go into that. You can make things can look one cost when they really turn out to be a different, and that's part of that is the ownership portion. And then you really need a vendor that's going to stand behind the product, that has knowledge and that has really built its support organization, focusing on the things that make a difference as customers need the support. So these are the categories that we hear all the time in terms of for my backup storage. And thank you, Rick. Yes, 100% focus for us. What do they require? And these are the four main categories. And hopefully these will resonate with everybody on the call.
What I think of this list, Tom, I mean, I'm going to highlight my personal favorites. I'm going to go, down here. This is good. I'm going to give another one here. What also is a lot hard to pick some favorites in
I
this.
know.
That's a big one. And I got to kind of separate. I think those are super important. And then over here, this, all of this is super important, but I'm going to go blue because this is ExaGrid blue, no hidden costs, that repeating or that upgrading without, breaking the bank. That's my map of favorite features. I'm just putting my Zoom It skills to work here, but I think that's a really good set of business requirements. And I'm just basing that on what I see when I talk to customers and partners, and ExaGrid comes up a lot. I can absolutely confirm that. And, I love it. We'll talk about some of the resiliency elements here in a bit. But the tiered backup storage is one of the, absolute conversation starters with ExaGrid. Tom, tell us a little bit about that.
So when you take a look at across all those four requirements, then you say, well, how do you get something? How do you look at a product, a solution that really truly does meet all these requirements? We have an architecture that we wrap up in the words tiered backup storage that we believe and has proven to meet those requirements. You can see the list of pros, all the stuff, sort of how that ties back to meeting the requirements. But fundamentally, our backup storage solution is tiered. That word gets used a lot and it applies in many different circumstances. But for backup, we have this notion where we have capacity within our solution that is dedicated to what we call a landing zone. Some of you will have heard that term a fair bit, but it really makes a difference in terms of some of those things that Rick highlighted for backup times and also restore times. It's like straight disk, which you all know and love and has a lot of pros and benefits. But then we further go on and deduplicate that data in that landing zone, that high-speed cache into our repository tier so that stuff can get pushed out of the landing zone when it's older and you don't need it because all your restores are going to be from your most recent backups, which are sitting there cached in the landing zone. And it takes some getting used to a tiered architecture, et cetera. But people find once they are utilizing that, it's solving all of their problems. And we love to explain and help solve how our tiered backup storage will meet the needs.
One thing I'll add to this, Tom, is that this visualizes it really well, but there's also additional handling and protection. And I'm not a good person in the lab. Okay, I'm notorious for just I'm a bad steward. But I can say we've had an ExaGrid in the lab as long as I can remember, and still to this day I run demos on to the ExaGrid every day for our use case on my team. But you can actually softly kind of exceed some of these landing zone limits and stuff. One time I sent you a picture of some really, really red because I over exceeded, but you know what? It still kept on going. I mean, it was not an ideal state, but like there's handling, there's resiliency, there's intelligence. And that was before, because my use case wasn't scaling out, but that was before some of these scale out technologies, and just the smartness of it really kind of scales.
Yeah, so in conjunction with the tiered architecture that we have within each appliance, these things are very much scale out. It's like Lego blocks. And so as your backup needs grow, which they always do, you can just snap in additional appliances. The important thing to remember is that each appliance brings not only storage capacity, which you need, but also CPU memory and networking, because you all know that deduplication is a very compute intensive process. And so you can't just add more disk. That will start to extend your backup windows. Everyone has seen that happen. We have a better solution in terms of bringing that resources with each appliance in a scale out. You can go up to 32 appliances in a single connection, which means up to over 6 petabytes worth. And you'll know that the terabyte per hour of backup ingests, courtesy of our architecture, doubles or triples or whatever as you add the ExaGrid appliances. And as a result, look at what happens to your backup window. It stays the same regardless of the increases in your backup growth.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And, this is one of those things that our architect teams, your teams, really kind of solve a different problem for customers because they don't know what they have. They just know, I don't want to allocate a lot of time to back up. I have a lot of data, and you need these high levels of protection. So, the sizing experts that your team have, and then, there's some Veeam calculators and stuff like that to look at some of the source data profiles can really help you kind of size these solutions. And trust me, scale out is the way. And when you add that much more compute as you scale out the grid, as it were, I think this type of stuff makes a very positive difference. I talked to a lot of customers, super happy, especially when it comes to upgrades, but got to also be thinking about security. In fact, I've spoken to a number of joint customers, Tom, had something bad happen, like ransomware, things like that, and we're very happy to drive recovery from Veeam from data stored on the ExaGrid. And one of my favorite features, it's not on here, I think we'll see it here in a bit, but I think security is something that is very important to both of us as well.
Absolutely, Rick. And we've been keeping up with all, what's happening out there. So a lot of this stuff is table stakes at this point, but I want to highlight the sort of 1 o'clock position in this shield associated with our ransomware recovery ability. We call it retention time lock, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but we use a delayed deletion technology and hiding the actual deduplicated data in a non-network facing tier to produce a tiered air gap. And this has truly saved a whole bunch of customers when they've been attacked by ransomware, and we're happy to share that and talk more about that. And so if you're looking for all of the things associated with a tiered backup storage and protection and with replication and high ingest rates and everything else, but you also need a ransomware recovery, and perhaps your security spending is up and has budget associated with it. We are finding that the ability to bring this in as a ransomware recovery technology is hugely helpful.
Yeah, I was looking for the word retention time lock versus, as it's displayed here. And friends, I have on this show and several other Veeam properties, I've spoken a lot about my word I made up. I put it in the Rictionary, and the word is ultra resilient media. And the retention time lock that ExaGrid has implemented meets my criteria of being ultra resilient. It's right up there with air gapped, offline, immutable. So this particular implementation is one of those ultra resilient media types. And there's the Veeam ready qualifications and all those other things. But when it comes to ransomware recovery, having a media copy that gives you very high confidence of data recovery in a ransomware scenario, that is one that absolutely makes a difference. Speaking of Veeam Ready, the products carry several different qualifications.
Yeah, and as you mentioned at the beginning, we've been working together a long time. We know what it means. We have subject matter experts. We have close relationship with the support organizations. It's just a great experience. In our tiered backup storage slide, we talked about scalability. Veeam has solved scalability in the backup infrastructure space. You all know it well. And you put those two scalability solutions together, it's true end-to-end scalability. I like to use that term because I think that's really important. And so we'd be happy to talk with any more about this with anyone, give more examples, etc. And I do want to get on to some of the stuff about ExaGrid and the Veeam Data Mover and our S3 capabilities as well.
Yeah, and just one comment on this, NPS super high. Friends, by the way, that's on a 200-point score. It could be minus 100 or plus 100, so that's fantastic. And then this is one of the relatively new ones here. I'm super excited to see that you all are carrying not just the object immutability, but with the smart object storage API. So they are definitely doing the right things when it comes to implementing these capabilities for Veeam. And said best right here, tightly integrated. So definitely good stuff on, because a lot of your team runs that from a qualification standpoint here with Veeam.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
yeah, let's get into the goods. What does it look like? So I'm
Yep.
going to build this out because
Yep. Please.
there's a
Yep.
lot of clicks and I
There
might
is.
miss one, but walk us through
Yep.
it.
So there's the basics of just like taking in Veeam backups and being efficiency and bringing value, et cetera, including things like, and then also sort of ease of setup and management, including Sober. And we do utilize the Veeam data mover running on the ExaGrid. It's just a total win for several years and several releases now. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then we've added the S3 capability. So one of the questions that are coming up, well, when should I use a data mover? When should I use S3? Are there trade-offs in security, et cetera, et cetera? And that's one of the things that we wanted to hit on today. So, and then I'll also talk a little bit about what we do with fast clone. So you could jump to the next one.
Oh, but I got so much feedback here,
I
Tom. I mean, a lot of
I
times
know.
people come to me for storage efficiencies, right? And nothing does it better than hardware, right? So that's a good one. The ingest, the Veeam data mover, kind of a super interesting way that we've done that by kind of having it run ephemerally, just as it needs to. Yeah. So fast clone, you name it, it's awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about fast clone because that's also one of those super important difference makers.
Yeah, so it truly is an amazing Veeam technology where you guys had the ability to leverage your metadata and your backup format to tackle the reality of true fulls hit your infrastructure like nothing else, and yet infinite incrementals forever is not always a best practice and may not be appropriate for some of your most critical backup data. So by you guys giving ExaGrid essentially the metadata associated with, well, what would a full look like without having to send all of the actual data, it's a win-win. We take it one step further and Veeam hands us the metadata. We actually then turn around, use that metadata to assemble a true full inside our landing zone. And so if you're used to excellent restore performance with ordinary fulls in the landing zone, when you switch to synthetic fulls, they go like way faster, wicked faster, as we say here in
Wicked
Massachusetts.
faster.
And the restores are just as fast because we've resynthesized it into what a true full would be. So we don't have to run around and pull from data all across the universe in order to give you your restores back. So it's really an awesome combination. It all happens transparently behind the scenes. You just turn on Veeam Fast Cloning and we take care of the rest. And you can see some of the performance aspects associated with that.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of those moments where sometimes it's hard to pick a favorite. Storage efficiency, speed, uh,
Yep.
high performance. But this particular technique is one of those things that you can truly have it all. And I think that that is very, very attractive. And one of the things I'll highlight about the fast clone is, it's kind of tricky to talk about it on the use case of a deduplicating storage system. But it's one of, if we look just at fast clone, I like to call it, Tom, you're a storage guy more than me, but I like to call it no dupe. It's not deduplication, but it prevents duplication. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know what else to call it. But the thought here of doing these, the one time I had to explain it to someone, I said, anytime there's a read that has to be written again, fast clone would skip over that step. And that's just one simple way of verbalizing it. But then when you put it all together with this advanced data mover and what you're doing on the appliance, it's super duper attractive. Big shout out to let's see, we got Tony tuning in from Denver and Mohammed coming in from Saudi. Thank you. And let us know on the strings where you're tuning in from. I've got LinkedIn up here. I know we're live on a couple others. One of them doesn't let you do chats, but we are live, like like I'm watching it right here on the phone. So good stuff. So let's go to the next kind of area of the integration. And this is actually one of the newer things. And I remember, Tom, I want to say it was VeeamON 23. You were super excited
Yep.
about this initiative that your team has launched.
Yeah, and I think you got to give Veeam total cred for your embracing S3 not only now as a source of enterprise backup data that needs protection, but also in terms of interoperability on your storage targets. And so it was natural for us to also add that interface. And I did want to spend a little bit just contrasting S3 that you can do from Veeam to ExaGrid now. That's been in our software releases for at least over a year, and then also the data mover. So choices are good, but spending some time talking about why and the what's between them is very helpful. This is a pretty busy slide, but I'll see if I can break it down a little bit. So first of all, look at this, Veeam everywhere, right? So y'all know that you can run Veeam up in the cloud for protecting cloud workloads, whether it's M365, whether it's BNR for cloud workloads, just across the board. And so all of that data can come into the ExaGrid using the S3 protocol. So if you're all in on the cloud, you've got that covered through the S3 line at the very top there. We also know that a lot of folks will run Veeam sort of on-premise in hyper HCI environments, et cetera, whatever that is. And then Veeam can pull in, as you know, your M365 data. Excellent solution for that, right? And Rick, I'm sure you could go on for hours about the strengths associated with that and how it really brings protection to that all-important enterprise resource. But then BNR for all the on-premise data or maybe your cloud data, there's arrows all over the place, which is great. And then that Veeam that is within your IT data center has a choice of utilizing S3, particularly as it's required for M365 because VVM really requires an S3 target, and then potentially using the Veeam data mover for backup and recovery workloads for your on-premise or potentially even your cloud-based data. And you really can get the best of both worlds. And so oftentimes we are seeing customers with a combination, Veeam customers with a combination. So the S3 is required for M365, works great. Good integration fully there. But then we also support S3, as I mentioned, for Veeam backup and recovery. So, and replication, sorry. So the integrations Rick highlighted in terms of the Veeam Ready, both for the data mover and also with the S3. We have S3 object locking fully supported. That's important because Veeam has provided significant immutability protection when utilizing the S3 object interface, and ExaGrid can fully do all of those. That brings you an advantage when using S3, particularly for M365 or BNR, where you can have Veeam actually lock your backup data in the ExaGrid landing zone. And so because of the S3 object locking and immutability, you get protection of even your most recent backups. With ExaGrid retention time lock, they can go ahead and delete the most recent backups within our landing zone, which means that when you go to do ransomware recovery, we're having to rehydrate that data. So the good news is you get it back, but rehydration always takes a little bit longer. So if you have your most critical backups where recovery SLAs are like just unbelievably tight and unbelievably important, utilizing S3 from Veeam with immutability to the ExaGrid with the object locking, boy, that was a mouthful, can really give you some advantages. And you can mix and match all of these. So you really can lock in the appropriate integration technology based upon the the backup workloads that you have, and really essentially the SLAs you have associated with that. Of course, we do TLS, certificate validation, all the table stakes around the S3 stuff. And here's one of my favorite terms is that end-to-end scalability. So ExaGrid has a tiered backup with scale-out architecture. Veeam has sober and scale-out in terms of proxies and everything else. One of the things that means in terms of our S3 implementation is that you can have a lot of objects across your entire your enterprise backup, right? Many of you utilizing Veeam's S3 are familiar with that. What have we done? Well, first of all, we have broken up those objects across the different appliances. And so if you have 8, 10, 15 appliances in your on-premise IT data center, the Veeam objects will be distributed across all of those. So naturally, you will have compute and memory resources allocated to each of those. In addition, within each appliance, we are containerizing those objects with a metadata, et cetera. So we've taken a very scale out approach to our S3 implementation because backup performance, ingest, and restore is just important. It's one of those requirements that we talked about at the very beginning. And so really, bottom line, comprehensive VBM and also BNR backup and restore across a variety of transports. I know there's a lot there. There's a lot of options, but the good news is we have sales folks that can talk through that. We really take a very solution sell approach to what we do, Rick. And so hooking up with an ExaGrid sales resource can understand, drill into some of those needs and bring about the solutions.
So one thing I really like about this, especially for the Microsoft 365 side of it, Tom, is the data sovereignty story, because that's one of the biggest objections for that type of data, hosting it only in the cloud, right? So this is the immediate, sortable, and resilient answer for that. We actually have 2 questions. This is awesome. I'm going to go backwards because it's right fresh off the end. This is Mahamud's question. Welcome, Mahamud, joining from Yemen. Does the S3 lock both tiers or just the landing zone only? That's actually a good question.
It's a great question. From an S3 API standpoint, the landing zone objects are locked, but then our repository tier uses an internal object-based file system where we have immutability and locking and all the good things. So the two really work hand in hand to provide more of that end-to-end, and let's not forget that ransomware recovery.
Right on, right on. And that's the ultra resilient element for sure. So again, welcome, Mahmoud. And then a question from Mohammed from Saudi. When using ExaGrid as a repository, so let's think more like data center use case, backup and replication, which proxy transport mode is not faster than hot add mode? I think hot add is pretty fast, but Tom, I feel like the data mover can take it in any mode. Direct SAN's always nice. I don't know if you have a preference.
Yeah, that's so you want to optimize your Veeam environment, take all those things into considerations, and Veeam is just awesome at that and has the expertise. They know what they're doing, and then it turns around. You're going to have a fast backup target in the ExaGrid that goes along with that. So you tweak some things in Veeam, you organize that, you do some things on the ExaGrid, and truly, again, end to end meets your requirements.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add to that, Mohammed, is that the hot add transport mode in the end has better throughput from a source to target, from the source side of source to target flow, but there's a little bit more sequencing and overhead to get it ready and then clean it up. So when you're thinking about the time, that's actually those sequences that mounting and dismounting, that's all outside of the transfer window. And one of the tricks I like to do, Mohammed, is I actually like to put my backup. This sounds crazy, but I put a lot of backup proxies on Hyper-V if I'm backing up VMware. Has to be network mode at that point, but it doesn't have those API overhead sequences. Some people will do physical for the same reason, but they could entertain direct SAN. So it depends, but some of the Veeam architects, of course, can help you out with some of those design considerations. Hey, Tom, thank you so much for joining us here on Tech Bytes.
Thank you, Rick. I really enjoyed the experience.
And Felicia, our producer, is going to push out a link to exagrid.com where you can check that out, get some more information, and truly a really focused backup storage solution. And actually, one thing, it might sound a little weird coming from me. I understand a lot of organizations have more than one backup product. ExaGrid can work with all of them. Okay, I'm all about playing good in the sandbox. And then secondly, all the other backup products in the world are in the interest of protecting your data, it actually makes a lot of sense to have one consistent target for that. So keep that in mind as well, but also keep Veeam in mind. All right,
Thank you,
on
Rick.
behalf of the producers, Felicia coming in from Dallas, Jeffrey live from the Barncade, and Lady Megatron from Central Ohio, we want to thank you all for watching this week's episode of Tech Bites. We will see you soon. We don't have a topic for next week, but we'll be up with something.